You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christy and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Dodge Movie Podcast. This is episode 132. We are going to be talking about the film Tombstone, which came out in 1993. We rented it through Apple TV for $3.99, but if you're willing to sit through ads, you can watch it for free on Prime through the Freevee app. It stars Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer, Sam Elliot, Bill Paxton, Powers Booth, Michael Biehn, Charlton Heston, Jason Priestley, John Tenney, Thomas Hayden Church, Dana Delaney, Michael Rooker, and an almost unrecognizable Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah, well, must have been one of his first roles, but he was not Sling Blade at this point.
No, that very much he did not look anything like himself.
It was the voice that keyed us in, right?
You said, was that Billy Bob Thornton? And I was just like, no, it looks nothing like Billy Bob Thornton, but the voice is what did it for you. It's interesting. As I'm giving the stats of writer-director, I kind of feel like this is the place to kind of tell. This movie almost didn't get made based on a YouTube video that I saw. So Kevin Jarre wrote the film. He also did 85's Rambo. In 1985, he wrote Rambo First Blood Part 2. In 89, he wrote Glory. He wrote The Mummy from 1999. So he wrote this film and he was going to direct it. And it was at Universal. And then Kevin Costner was also working on his Wyatt Earp. And he basically called up Universal when he got word about this one, Tombstone, and he said, if you do Tombstone, I'm not doing Waterworld. So Universal said, hey, Kevin, you're not going to get to do Tombstone here at Universal. So they were looking for a distributor, and they called up Disney. And they said, will you please back this film? Will you distribute it? And Disney said, yes, if you cast Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp.
Why did Disney want Kurt in the film?
I mean, my only guess is the long-standing relationship with Kurt Russell. I mean, he has been...
Right. I was thinking it wasn't because they were trying to make him a headlining star, because he starred in Escape from New York, which was, I think, many years previous to this. So I think he'd already transitioned from Disney kind of funny kid, movies into leading man status.
Right. The person telling this story didn't explain that.
Right. Sorry.
So I don't know that.
Too much detail.
So Kevin Jarre and everybody started off, working on this film. And the person who was telling me this story, I forget his name, but it could easily be looked up. He was the gentleman who made all of the weaponry. And he had a relationship with Kevin. He told stories of them going up into the mountains and drinking whiskey and shooting guns. And so they were like friends. And so Kevin Jarre would have this gentleman over to kind of, as he was writing the script, look at these 5 pages, he would say. And then he'd bring him back over later. Look at these 5 pages. So he was on the film. He's a consultant, and they filmed 4 weeks with Kevin Jarre, and he very much wanted everything. He wanted the look to be like a John Ford movie. But at that time, at least, everything was close-ups.
Oh, wow. Fascinating. Instead of the big, expansive vista.
They wanted it to be like in your face, the people. They wanted it to be about the people. And so Disney fired Kevin Jarre after 4 weeks. So there is 4 weeks of footage of filming that may never be seen. It's in the Disney vault.
Right.
And then they hired this guy, George Cosmatos, who ironically was the director of the 85 Rambo First Blood Part 2. So I wonder if that was a little awkward that.
Yeah.
And he also did Cobra, Leviathan, and he came in. And Michael Biehn in an interview said that George Cosmatos was a jerk, that Michael Biehn watched him treat everybody kind of below the line, as we say, the people who aren't paid as much as the big actors. He was a jerk to him, like, move that fatty over there, like, just rude, absolutely rude. Yelled at the crew, like, mean. Now, he treated Kurt and Val and Powers Booth and Sam Elliott, he treated all of them. He kissed their ass, he said. Michael Biehn said that. And he even was cordial to Michael Biehn. But Michael didn't like the way he treated George or other people.
Right, the regular crew.
So Michael Biehn says he walked up to him at one point and Michael told him, go F yourself. Because,
nice.
And so it is lore. I don't know if Kurt, I could not find evidence that Kurt co-signed this, but I saw many instances where Kurt is credited, not in the film credit, but people say that Kurt Russell directed the film.
Yeah, I had read that independently. Maybe we got the same article, but I doubt it. I had read that he had done a lot of the directing work, and this makes sense if the nominal director was a jerk to everybody.
I think George had like kind of all these wild ideas, and he was also, and remember, they had 3 months to shoot it, and 1 month got eaten up by Kevin Jarre's work. And so they said that Kurt and Michael Biehn said like Kurt and Sam and Val and everybody was kind of like collaborating to keep it on the rails and to keep things going. And like Kurt wrote up shot lists and gave it to George. And so I think as on the set, George was directing, but Kurt was kind of like maybe day by day just keeping the train going, so that, because I think George wasn't paying attention to time either. And I think Kurt knew that this film was kind of, if we don't bring this thing to the finish line, it's not going to get out there.
Fascinating.
So let me see, since I interrupted my normal kind of intro, but I felt like that was a good place to kind of talk about that. The DP for this film is William A. Fraker, who did 68's Bullet and 79's 1941, and then a movie we know well, 1983's War Games. It was filmed in Tucson and Sonita, Arizona. It was a Hollywood Pictures. The synopsis for this film is: a successful lawman's plan to retire anonymously in Tombstone, Arizona, are disrupted by the kind of outlaws he was famous for eliminating. I have 3 taglines for you. I like the first one. I'm your huckleberry.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It doesn't necessarily describe the film very well, but it's such an iconic line. Gotta love it.
Yeah. Justice is coming.
Bland.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I didn't get this as much in watching the film, but in watching the videos on YouTube, they were talking about how this is the most honest portrayal of Wyatt Earp, because it doesn't portray him as like, the superhero with the cape, that he was a flawed human. He cheated on his wife. He would cheat in a poker game. He would, he was kind of going to different boom towns trying to rustle up cash through different means that weren't always legal, that he wasn't like, it was more his brother, maybe like Virgil, played by Sam Elliott, or Morgan, played by Bill Paxton, who was maybe more of an honest lawman. Oh, actually, it was another brother that I don't think was in the film served under Virgil. So Wyatt wasn't like kind of the white hat cowboy that we talk about.
Well, we know Wyatt mostly because he lived long enough to move to Hollywood and tell everyone in Hollywood how great he was.
Yeah, exactly. All right. The last tagline is: every town has a story. Tombstone has a legend.
Gonna go with I'm your huckleberry.
Yeah. I have to say, in my teen years and growing up, Val Kilmer was not, I don't know, I never really cared for the characters he played, or I just wasn't a Val Kilmer fan, but I have come to be a huge Val Kilmer fan, and I can see why a lot of people reference this portrayal. He did an amazing job in this film, and he's the one that says, I'm your huckleberry.
Absolutely. I think Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday is kind of the pinnacle. That's what everyone would be measured against if we made this story again. But kind of getting to Val Kilmer, though, after Real Genius, I was a fan. I liked his work there. I think he captured the feel of a place like a Caltech or a Harvey Mudd very well in that character, but it was also kind of a little silly, over the top. So I always respect somebody who has good comic timing, and this film is kind of the opposite. He doesn't have a lot of really good lines, so a totally different kind of approach. But definitely, I think he's more memorable as Doc Holliday than the other actors are in their roles, sadly.
Right. When we watch Real Genius for the podcast, I liked his character. But I remember when you just said it just now, in high school, I felt he was kind of arrogant and a bit of a dick.
Well, his
when
character
I watched it the first time
in Real Genius he was a bit.
And he was a jerk in Top Gun.
Really, I would not say that. I actually think that Maverick was the total weenie. Val Kilmer, I thought, did a great job as Iceman of the overachiever. Even for a fighter pilot, he was the best. And this idiot who was not as good, who didn't follow the rules, who endangered everyone around him, shows up and thinks he's got the BDE? I don't think so.
Okay, you're totally right. But for whatever reason, I mean, we could go into a long philosophical conversation, but we won't. I think teenager me, Maverick was the hottie, and so then he was the leading man, so he's the hero. But you're right, he also was a jerk.
Yeah, very much so.
Yes.
But the hero of that film is Goose. Everyone knows that.
Right. Okay, we digress.
Brief digression.
Kick us off with your pickup line, then let's get in this movie because I have a lot to say.
1879. The Civil War is over, and the resulting economic explosion spurs the Great Migration west.
Pretty much.
That's just exposition. It doesn't really say anything about the plot.
This movie opens up. We've got all the iconography. We've got good guys and bad guys. It's clear that Powers Booth is not a good guy. Curly Bill Bronicus.
Yeah,
he's a bad guy.
I need to summon the costumer because I'm curious if it was realistic at the time for everyone to wear black, all black. Do you know the answer to this?
Well, I thought you were going to ask something else because Powers Booth had that red shirt on, and then they made a note that all of the cowboys, they call them, which, that term is used so generically. Cowboys are good guys and bad guys, but in this film, it very much was kind of describing the bad element that would come.
It was a gang.
Yes. And so they had these red sashes tied to their waist, and that was not historically accurate. That's just something that the film added, I think, so that we knew because there were 80 speaking parts in this film. 80?
80?
Yes, 80 cast members with speaking parts in this film. And so I think with that many people, we had to have a shorthand so that we knew who were the good guys and bad guys beyond white hats and black hats.
So there are generally two reasons that you have a uniform, right? One is for affiliation, so this is the Crips and the Bloods or whatever, and the other is identification in the middle of combat. You could maybe argue the latter, but I think the former would be a bad idea. You wouldn't want to advertise, I'm a lawbreaker, Mr. Sheriff, right? So that makes sense that they just threw it on there for the film, just like, as far as I understand, the little bamboo pole with a flag on the back of every soldier in Akira Kurosawa movies was him trying to show the audience which side was which, not historically accurate. So that kind of thing, it's one of those things we fudge as filmmakers, right? Because you're right, when you have that many people on the screen, especially in a gunfight where they're cutting quickly, it's important to know who's the good guys and who's the bad guys.
Yep. We've got the saloons with poker games, we've got wagon trains, and we open up at the train station where the Earp boys are kind of all meeting. Wyatt appears like he gets there first.
Yeah, it
with
seems
his wife.
It seems like maybe the ladies had gone earlier, and the gents showed up to meet their wives. I wasn't exactly clear on the timing of the arrival, but that does also bring us to an opportunity to talk a little bit about laudanum, whatever they call it. And basically, it was just liquid opium. Mm-hmm. So his poor wife was an addict.
Right. That's when we learn about Wyatt's wife. She has migraines, I believe, is what or a headache.
I think she has an opium addiction.
Well, yes, but she gave a reason why she felt she needed the laudanum.
Sure. Wink, wink.
Yeah. You very clearly pointed out when we meet Dana Delaney's character, when she exits the wagon, she's got catchlights in her eyes. She's got the hair halo glow, and not just Wyatt with the male gaze, but there's kind of 4 men standing outside the saloon, and they all are.
They do the Roger Rabbit eyes.
Yeah.
Right? Rah, rah, rah. Yeah, I caught that because to me, this is a return to classic Hollywood. I don't know that I was a Dana Delaney fan necessarily. Obviously, she's very photogenic. She's a Hollywood actress. But yoicks, they really liked her. The camera crew loved Dana Delaney because that shot was absolutely career-making gorgeous. And it reminded me, and you mentioned the close-ups, of the classic back in the day, and they'd even gel it a little bit, and they'd cut to Deborah Carr or somebody, and you just go like, whoa, Nelly, that's an incredible shot. And it's okay, but it's totally different than the rest of the shots, right? Like, it visually looks much different, but you're like, okay, well, we'll let that one go. And then they cut back and forth a few times, and it really, to me, highlights they gave her the Hollywood superstar actress treatment. So credit to the camera crew. Maybe they held out for extra donuts. I don't know, but they really did a good job on that one.
George Cosmatos, the director, was quoted as saying that all the lighting and the mustaches are real, and meaning that all of the men proudly grew their own mustaches. All the different actors in the film were very boastful about their ability to grow those mustaches.
One of the million reasons I could not be an actor, I couldn't grow that kind of mustache if my life depended on it, and you gave me 50 years. Right. Sorry.
And then the lighting, he was referring to all the images of lightning that were filmed on location during the monsoon season. However, lighting effects in acting scenes were created with the lightning strikes 250,000 linear units.
Huh.
I don't know what that is, but there you go.
Yeah, well, they did it.
Okay, before I move on to writing, is there anything else that you loved about the cinematography of this film?
Yeah, I did make a couple of notes. One thing I did like was it opened with a lot of stock footage, but then they had some shots of Val Kilmer that they aged to match, and I thought that matched pretty well.
Yeah, it worked.
I felt like the opening shots were alluding to the Three Amigos, which came for 7 years previous. The Mexican wedding could have very much been El Guapo, but they had to have been aware of that film. There's no way they weren't, which is fine. Okay, maybe they even used the same set and some of the same costumes.
I will say that yes, a couple of the sets did look very familiar because I am quite familiar with Three Amigos, and I believe we're talking about it before the year is up.
If we haven't already, we simply must.
Yeah.
I famously named a dog Dusty Bottoms once, so I like that film.
I love that.
So also, mentioning lighting, and this is a thing where my heart goes out to the camera crew, because we see a couple of times, once when the Earps first meet Doc Holliday, and then also in Doc's death scene, you see as they cut from one actor to the next, the lighting changes very drastically. And so just a reminder that when we're shooting these films, we tend to set up the lighting and the cameras and the blocking for one actor, and they do all of their lines with their acting partner, that scene partner, doing their lines. But then we reset and relight and reset the camera and everything, and then shoot the second actor's lines. And then in edit, we interleave them. The problem is, sometimes the sun doesn't cooperate, or the clouds, and you will see noticeably different lighting, especially if you're outside, right? Clouds can come and go, and you'll see the difference. And I assume this is one of the long list of things that I notice and no one else does. But my heart goes out to the camera crew because I'm sure they were kicking their feet and maybe throwing their coffee cups as they saw the lighting change drastically throughout the day. So, sorry, guys.
Let's see. My only note actually for writing, I did like the writing in this film. Like I said, it was lost on me, but now that I look back, the nuance of, I like gray area characters. So the fact that they did write it with Wyatt not being, and not only Wyatt, but Johnny Ringo apparently was a very well-educated man, knew Latin and Spanish, and he went to university. So it's interesting that somebody like a Johnny Ringo seemed just like
right.
just a bad guy with just a one version kind of just bad guy. He has multiple layers. Like, he's educated. That's why he trades that conversation with Wyatt in Latin. He understands what Wyatt's saying.
I think it was Doc Holliday, but yeah, the Latin combo.
Okay. Yep. It was Doc.
Which I would not have been able to follow along. I did not study Latin, so credit to both of them. Yeah, I think we often tend to, in Hollywood, we talk about the white and black hats in cowboy movies especially, but
right.
We tend to make things fairly black and white when a lot of these characters were maybe not, particularly pure or holy. They were willing to resort to rough means to what they felt like do the right thing. And this is a very interesting concept because it's not really explored much in Westerns. And so we look at another film we've talked about recently, Unforgiven. I don't think you would call Will Money good in any way, shape, or form. But here, the Earp boys, they're trying to do good, I guess, in their way. But then they are... they shoot people. So there's no real kind way around it. They're causing some fairly severe harm physically to people. Did they deserve it? Oh, okay. But we kind of tend to use juries to determine if people deserve killing. So it is kind of a bit of a gray area, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe that could be something a film school student could do is reshoot this from Curly Bill's perspective.
Right. That's fun. I like it. Well, there's even contention between the brothers because Virgil is trying to be the lawman. He's trying, I can't remember what they called it, but basically you weren't supposed to have a firearm in town. And he said, I'm not even saying like that you can't have a firearm, or I'm not saying you can't use a firearm. You just can't carry it. Oh, I wish I could remember what they called it. They had a term for, and so Virgil was even, because Wyatt was like, come on, man, Virgil, I have to have, my firearm. And that's when Virgil said, I'm not even saying that you can't carry it or can't have, or you can't carry it. You can have it. I don't know how you were supposed to, I guess you just can't come into town. You got to go home first. Well, you turn him in. Oh, okay.
You would, in theory, turn him into the sheriff or marshal or whatever his name was.
And then you get him back.
Yeah, when you leave it. And so presumably they were all relatively unique, so you wouldn't need the little paper ticket, but maybe they did that too.
Right. So
pistol number 7, please.
I was trying to yes and you by saying, yes, even within the family, there was strife.
Right. But speaking of firearms, this does bring up, it was a Hollywood film in that 6-shooters and double-barreled shotguns had lots and lots of shots in them without reloading. It wasn't particularly accurate in that regard.
No. Though the look of the gun apparently was, because this gentleman that I'll put the video in the show notes, this video plays like it's a joke, like an SNL bit, but I think it's true. But the gentleman, they did a lot of research, and these guns were very much what the Earps actually carried.
Yeah, I believe that would be fairly straightforward to determine, because I think at that time there weren't a whole lot of options. Right. There were options of the single action army, but there was the Colt and the Remington, what have you. So that I totally would believe. And to be fair to the filmmaker, more to the editor, right, is when you're trying to edit the scene together, right, they may not have even shot scenes of them reloading, but as an editor, how are you going to mesh that in necessarily with the rest of the action and keep the scene flowing. So it's a bit of a nitpick, but it is kind of an important thing when you see somebody with a double-barreled shotgun just shooting away like there's no tomorrow. It does bump me at least.
Right. But I see your point. Like, and you don't have to show every time they reload, but maybe while they're hiding behind the rock and Virgil and Wyatt are talking, or maybe not Virgil, but Morgan and Wyatt are talking. Well, Morgan wasn't in the OK. I keep correcting myself because I'm realizing because I think Morgan Morgan there.
I thought Morgan, Virgil, and Wyatt were there with Doc, but I don't know.
Because there's a movie that I watched in film school. It's a black and white movie, and it's about the OK Corral. It's not Who Shot Liberty Valance.
Right.
But anyway, it's a black and white old movie. And I thought it was Morgan who was killed that kind of spurred the Earps to want to go after the Clantons.
Yeah.
Because they were angry that they killed their brother. Anyway, I digress. But you could have two cowboys, let's say, hiding behind a rock and exchanging dialogue and show them reloading just once. And then you're like, oh, when we don't see them, they're reloading.
Right. So
to your point, I'm trying to yes and you.
Thank you. A technical digression of sorts.
Yes.
The first revolvers were cap and ball. You had to load each cylinder with powder and bullet, and these were cartridge based. That was one of the things that made the Colt single action army a little bit of an advance, although a lot of people would argue whether or not it was technologically the best solution, but they could use cartridges. However, some people like Wild Bill Hickok solved the reloading problem by carrying 3 or 4 pistols with them at all times. So another option would be bang, 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 toss away, grab next gun, bang, bang, bang. Now, apparently also, while Bill said, when asked why you carried so many pistols, he said, I just keep shooting till the other guy stops. Which that just reminds me of those like in the court case you hear like, the defendant, has shot in self-defense. Well, why did he shoot 23 times? Well, apparently Wild Bill had that approach, right? And I did like a little bit of detail. So credit to, I don't know if it's this weapons guy or the director or even Kurt Russell. But when they're going to go confront the Clantons at the OK Corral, you see Kurt Russell put a pistol in the pocket of his overcoat. And I remember reading this years ago, and I thought it was fascinating. They said that's historically accurate. He didn't carry his pistol on a gun belt like we see in the movies. He would just drop it in the pocket of his coat.
Wyatt Earp III participated in this film, and it's possible that was even like a background character or something in addition to like a consultant.
Right.
You mentioned the old footage, and kudos to them for choosing Robert Mitchum.
Yeah, fun.
To narrate that part, because it just brings more of that historical Western kind of culture and iconography to these films. And then I really enjoyed when they all get off the train and there's the reflection with probably the ticket window or something.
I made a note of that too. That was a great shot.
And Wyatt says like, stop. Because portraits were hard to get.
Oh, expensive and time consuming. Yeah. And
so it looked like a portrait, and he was kind of like, just stop and take this moment in. I kind of liked that scene. And so that was like Wyatt kind of being a good guy. I mean, I very much felt the fidelity to his brothers. They were proud to be the Earps.
Right. Well, again, big Christmases, lots of grandbabies.
Right. Anything in writing and editing that you wanted to bring up?
Well, from the category of perhaps historically accurate, one of the saloons or gambling houses was called the Oriental, which is a name for a region in that time of the world. They called the Far East the Orient.
Right.
However, I don't know if people would be comfortable with that today. There were, again, much like with Unforgiven, there were unexplained, quote-unquote, Chinese people in the background, and they were dressed, in my opinion, in very stereotypical clothing. The black tunic and trousers and the white socks with the black ballet slippers. Again, I'd have to talk to our costumers. I don't know if that was strictly correct, but the part that I'm pretty sure we really need to take a look at is Sheriff Behan has this line where he says he's the head of the, and I quote, nonpartisan anti-Chinese league. And I thought, nonpartisan? Like,
That
this
seems
was,
very. You've taken a stance.
yeah, this is a pretty partisan position. And again, perhaps it was historically accurate, but it was interesting that he threw that in there. And was that an attempt to show us that this character Behan was kind of a bit of a blowhard because the only people he was taking on were the poor 3 Chinese guys in the background, and the cowboys he let go? Like, he had no interest in them as sheriff. He was going to go after these 3 poor Chinese guys. So again, possibly accurate for the time period, but also just a little hurtful.
Right. Sadly, I think that goes in alignment with what I've learned about.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that was really accurate.
Yeah.
But still hurtful.
So on to kind of costume and sets.
Yeah.
Val was sick with tuberculosis.
His character, right? Not actual Val.
Yes.
Okay, didn't know
That's
how method
true.
he went.
That's true. Doc Hollywood was sick with tuberculosis, and so he was very sweaty and pale throughout most of the film. The actor, Val, asked the art department to fill his deathbed with ice when he laid on it. So not only would he have a little bit of a shake from the cold, and that would hopefully show that he is dealing with a great deal of pain, but also in saying goodbye to his best friend Wyatt,
Yeah.
it would give him a little bit of an unsteady feeling to be so cold.
And that scene actually reminded me of, I think it's Only Angels Have Wings, right? Where the pilot doesn't want anyone to see him die. Mm-hmm. And he orders him out of the room.
Oh, I could cry.
Oh,
Yeah.
sad.
No, that's a good point, I think. And then he looks down at his feet and he kind of chuckles because he says cowboys aren't supposed to die with their boots off. And he looked down and he realized, oh, my boots are off.
Although I have to say, boots don't seem to be the most comfortable thing. Like, I know you're not happy about dying, but I don't know that having the boots on makes it any better.
That's how tough the cowboys are.
I guess so. Again, not a cowboy.
Okay, was there any head trauma in this film?
There was a lot of bullet trauma, but I did make note of a couple bit of head trauma. Virgil pistol whips Ike Clanton after he threatened Virgil at the Oriental the first time. And then Wyatt pistol whips another cowboy after Ike is released from jail. So that was apparently a fairly common upgrade beyond punching, but below shooting.
And we had some romance. All 3 of the Earp boys that we met were married, but I believe...
Smoochie. Well, my first smoochie is the horses nuzzle after Wyatt and Josephine have their horse race. I thought that was subtle from the editor.
A horse smooch?
A little horse smooch. And then Wyatt and Josephine finally smooch after he comes to see her after HMS Pinafore at the end of the film. There's the big romantic meeting.
So I believe that I must have read this in the trivia because I don't remember a video that there was a scene where Josephine and Wyatt have sex, but they removed it because they didn't want Wyatt to appear quite
too easy.
Yeah. Well, cheating on his wife too easily. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought maybe I missed it, but I thought after the horse race, it was tension, but not actual waka waka.
No, not in this, but there was a scene that was filmed. Mm-hmm. All right. This one's going to be tough. A driving review?
Well, not exactly a driving review, but I do have a vehicular note.
Wow.
When they show up, the train car off of which Wyatt gets is number 5150. And I think, is the art department run by a Van Halen fan?
It has to be.
Has to be. So
because this was 93. I think that album came out right around there.
It was a little before then, maybe a few years before.
Well,
so
even more
who's
so.
in charge of the art department on this film? So I'd love to track down that person and see if
are they Sammy or David?
That would be funny. Jennifer Hagar was in charge of the art department.
All right, are you ready to go to the numbers?
Let's go to the numbers.
This film had a budget of $25 million. It made almost 2.5 times that worldwide at $56.5 million. adjusted for today, that would be like 125.9 million. So good job, Disney. You saved your ass. The movie that almost didn't get made.
And I would think when you factor in video sales and cable showings, I bet they did it pretty well in this film.
Yeah, this is a good one. I liked it. IMDb gives it a 7.8 out of 10. Critics on Rotten Tomatoes give it 72%, while audiences agree with us. It's a good film at 94%. It's over 2 hours at 2 hours, 10 minutes. It's rated R. It is listed as a biography drama history, which makes it sound totally boring, and it's not boring at all.
No, it's like an action film.
It totally is. That's
Right.
like the maybe drama. I agree with drama history. I don't know. That title sounds like something you'd watch in history class.
I think if they just said Western, you would have been fine.
Yes, absolutely. Val Kilmer was nominated for Best Male Performance and the Most Desirable Male.
Ooh. I don't know.
Not
in this film. I mean, Top Gun era Val Kilmer. Yeah, I get it.
He's
but
rather sickly in this one.
tuberculic Doc Holliday? Ooh.
Right. All right, everybody. That wraps up this month of August and this theme. I have 2 correct guesses for this, but it's not too late to get yours in so that you could possibly be chosen as the winner for the month of August. As to what our theme is, please email me at Christy@DodgeMediaProductions.com. That link will be in our show notes if you just want a direct link so you know how to spell Christy. Guess what the theme for August is, but never forget,
Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christy and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to DodgeMediaProductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.